Well, good evening, everyone. This is Chris of the Ancient Scholar. I hope this video finds you all doing well. Just got off of work a few minutes ago. It's about 6 p.m., 1800 here. It's nice. I'm off of work. I do have a nice commute back home, unfortunately. That's going to be, it takes me about an hour, 15 hour, 20. But before I do that, I wanted to take the opportunity to do a little video on my experience with the new Google Pixel 9, the non-Pro phone. So this is the base entry-level Google Pixel 9 for 2024, and I've had it for just over a couple weeks now. I got it, I pre-ordered it as soon as it dropped, and then it came and it was available the same day. Pretty much everybody else had availability, with the exception of certain influencers that were given early access to the device. So I've had this about as long as anybody has had it, and so I wanted to talk about my experience with the Google Pixel 9 thus far. I have been essentially rocking this as my daily driver phone. To be very transparent with you all, I do also have an iPhone, and I have a iPhone 15, just a standard base model. And I do use that, but I have been using a Google Pixel as my work phone, and primarily do my business with between my two two jobs, my two primary jobs that I work, and then the iPhone is just kind of like my personal number. My wife and close friends, I use it because they all have iPhones, and they're all kind of in that walled garden, so to speak. So I have been using this very hard for essentially as a daily driver for the past couple of weeks, and so we'll see what I have to say about it. So let's just talk about my experience. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the design of the Pixel 9. I believe the design is amazing. It is absolutely beautiful. It is unique, and it is uniquely Pixel. You know that this is a Pixel. The design stands out a bit. It's a little unique, and I really think that Google nailed the design. Actually, the last couple of years, they've really nailed the design. I really liked the Pixel 8 design, and with the camera bar. You can see that this is more of a camera pill. It doesn't go all the way across, but again, it's very unique and very uniquely Pixel. And it just adds a lot of flavor to the phone. The phone is a glossy back. It's an aluminum frame. It uses Gorilla Glass Victus 2, I believe. So it's tough enough. It works. And the colors, I really like the color offerings this year. I went with I believe this is the Peony. It's kind of like a pinkish red color. It's bold. It really stands out quite a bit, and I think Google did a real good job with the colors, at least on the baseline Pixels this year. I'm really happy with the overall design. As far as the Tensor G3 and the RAM, I don't have any complaints about any of that. The Tensor G3 has worked just fine for me. It seems plenty fast enough. I know that it doesn't benchmark nearly as well as all of its contemporaries. The Snapdragons benchmark much higher, and of course the contemporary Apple silicon chips benchmark substantially higher. But I will say that the Tensor is highly optimized to run the artificial intelligence, some of the AI stuff. And even though a lot of the benchmarks, it is well behind many of its contemporaries, I think as far as what it's able to do with the running various artificial intelligence and machine learning applications, it's probably industry leading. So benchmarks, I don't necessarily think tell the entire story. Now, I'd say if you are going to use this as a heavy gamer, this is probably not going to be the phone for you. I know it has gaming modes and all that, but I don't. The only games I think I have on here are fairly simple games that don't really put a big load on the phone or the chip, like Monument Valley or something. A couple things like that. I'm not really a big gamer anyway, so that's not really what I use my phone for. So I don't really have any issues with that. The new Pixel 9s come with 12 gigabytes of RAM now, and then 16 gigabytes with the Pro version. And I think the increase in RAM is to help run all of the AI goodness that Google has been developing and perfecting the past several years. But the phone runs plenty fast enough. It's very smooth. It's a great consistent operating experience. I don't really have any complaints about the Tensor. I didn't really have a whole lot of complaints about the Tensor performance last year either, for that matter. I had some issues with specific applications like Strava crashing, and unfortunately, that is still the same situation this year. Strava in particular, it just seems that whenever I go into an out of cell service, Strava on the Pixel crashes. It's almost unusable unless I turn my data off. I have to actually go in and put my SIM card on hold and just go off a GPS, and then Strava works just fine. So it's just something it's something about Strava running on, I don't know if that's all Android devices or just the Pixel devices specifically, but there's just something that happens when I'm out biking and I go into and out of service that it just causes Strava to crash. This does not happen on my iPhone. Strava is probably better optimized for iPhone. That would be my guess for the operating system. So yeah, that is a big problem. But otherwise, it's the operating system is smooth. There aren't a whole lot of hiccups, and it seems to work just fine. As far as the screen is not a whole lot of different from last year's screen. The brightness, so it's a nice 120 hertz AMOLED screen, 430 ppi. So it's a 1080p plus display. It's a great display, no real complaints. 120 hertz, so it is a high refresh rate out of the box. Entry level phone, Apple, really. It's got an always on display. Here we go. Always on display out of the box on the entry level Pixel, like a lot of entry level Android phones. Apple. Well, anyway, people are gonna buy iPhones regardless. But it's just something I want to call out, that the baseline Pixel, you get a nice 120 hertz display. It's great color, silky smooth. You can see, look at that. It's just very smooth, just a joy. Very bright, actually incredibly bright. I believe it's 2700 nits peak brightness. That's brighter than the iPhone. I believe even brighter than the iPhone 16, which would be the competitor. The baseline iPhone 16 would be kind of a direct competitor to this Pixel 9, but the screen is definitely brighter. High refresh rate, and it can adapt between 60 and 120, so it's not a full-on LTPO display that goes from 1 hertz all the way up to 120 and can adapt like you see on the higher end or the flagship Pixels and the iPhone Pros and Pro Maxes. But it's still 120 hertz, and it gives you 60 to 120. So it's a great screen, and it has a lot to offer, and it's incredibly bright. So no complaints there. As far as the biometrics goes, I would say that's one of the major upgrades that Google made to the Pixel. You now have an in-screen ultrasonic fingerprint scanner replacing the optical fingerprint scanner of years past, and that has been something that I have complained about on prior Pixels, the Pixel 7 in particular. And then the Pixel 8, it still had an optical, but it was a little better. But now with the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, it just boom, just like that. It is incredibly fast. Just goes right in, and yeah, it works almost 100% of the time. If your finger's a little wet, it's still gonna work. And you don't get that flashing light, and you don't get blinded in the middle of the night. It also has face unlock. It's built into the camera, so it doesn't use a dot projector like the iPhone. So maybe it's not as secure, but it still works very, very good. So there we go. In low light, it doesn't work as good, but if there's enough light, it works just fine, and it just goes right in. And then, of course, you also have your pad and pen. So you have multiple different biometric options for getting into your phone. And those of you that use Android, you know that this is nothing new, but this is something that I think is really nice, as opposed to the iPhone, where with the iPhone, you have to, click on the power button, and you have to look at it, and then you have to swipe up to go in. But with the Pixel, right, I can be in my Pixel here, so you can see, I'm there. I've got my calendar widget there. So I put my Pixel into standby, and then when I just need to look at the Pixel, and it automatically unlocks, I don't have to swipe, and then it goes right into where I left off, right? So you all saw I was on the calendar, so here we go, right? So I'm lifting the phone up, I'm gonna look at it, boom, and it just goes right back in to where I left off. It's a simple thing, but it's so nice to have that versus the iPhone where you got to look at it and swipe up. Anyway, it's just a little touch of something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy Android though, the operating system, particularly Google's take. Well, I mean, Google is who originally built Android, but they kind of stripped down Googleized version of Android. I think is really nice, and it works. It's smooth, it's slick, and it's simple. It's fairly simplified, so it has a kind of iPhone-like feel with the additional ability to customize that you really get used to running on an Android-based phone. You kind of get the best of both worlds with the Pixel, I think. I think for someone who's looking to detox maybe from the iOS, the Apple ecosystem, or looking to try something different, I think that this would be a great gateway drug for other Android phones. And then you can get into the more exotic phones that have even more options and all sorts of interesting things. But this is very, very kind of iPhone-like, but still gives you a lot of customization that it just kind of comes with Android. Okay, so biometrics, big win on the new fingerprint sensor, the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. And I think that they've actually improved the face unlock as well. Actually, I think it's now, and may have been this way from last year, I don't remember, but they do now say that face unlock is secure enough that you can use it for banking and payment applications and things like that. So yeah, great. Biometrics, big win on this year's Pixel. All right, moving on to the camera. The camera has seen some modest improvements. So when you look at the rear camera, it's still a dual camera setup. You can argue that on a phone this expensive, the lack of a dedicated zoom or telephoto lens is maybe a problem. But you do get a really good main camera lens. I think it's a 48 or it's a 50 megapixel lens. I think by default it pixel bends. So by default it essentially bends those pixels down into a 12 megapixel image. But it's very easy to go in and say, hey, I want you to do 50 megapixel raw photos. So it's very easy to make the camera do that if you want. So you have the option of doing that. And it's essentially the same main camera from last year. I think is essentially the same 50 megapixel camera. But they did upgrade or update the wide or the ultra wide angle camera. It was a 12 megapixel ultra wide last year, and now it is a 48 megapixel ultra wide. And boy, oh boy, does it do some interesting things for this phone. You now are able to take good, high quality macro photography. Get in close, get high quality macro shots, and the ultra wide photographs are beautiful and colorful. You can see my prior video where I kind of do a rundown of the camera, and I have some examples of photographs. It takes great photographs. And the panoramic mode has seen a lot of upgrades, in my opinion, and the panoramic photographs that this phone takes are industry leading, in my opinion, and definitely are better than what I could get from my iPhone 15. So the camera, I think, has seen some great upgrades, but the main camera is more or less the same. And then, of course, there are some AI things, a few new AI things like the Add Me feature and some of the scene where you can change the scene and add different AI developed scenes and things like that. And then there's some watered down AI features that have made their way into this phone. Obviously, you get the full experience and you don't have to pay for it. At least you get a full year of the Super Gucci Gemini, Google Gemini, on the higher end phones, as opposed to a little more watered down here. And if you want like the full thing, you've got to pay for it. But you can still access Gemini and all the high end AI tools if you want to pay for the money. I don't know that's just not something I'm going to use. And the AI tools that I have access to already out of the box are fine with me. Right, so moving on to the battery. The battery has seen some upgrades. It's a slightly larger battery. The new Tensor chip is a little more efficient, and maybe there's been some software optimization as well. I will say the battery life on this phone is substantially better than last year. All right. That just is kind of has been my experience. The first few days, of course, the phone kind of learns your habits, but I can do some damage with this phone. I'm talking, 5, 6 plus hours of screen on time, just blasting with videos, watching YouTube, listening to music, just keeping that screen on, just using the hell out of this phone. And yeah, it seems to deliver, pretty good. I can basically get all day battery life. What more could you ask for? No complaints. I think the battery life has improved over last year, so I can't complain. As far as the operating system's a bit of a mixed bag. So it's still running the old Android 14, is it? I believe. And in the next few weeks, Android 15 will be dropping. So we'll be able to experience a new operating system fairly soon on this. From what I've seen, it doesn't look like the Android 15 is going to be a substantial overhaul. Like the new contemporary Material UI that we've seen in the last several years with Android seems to be remain roughly intact, and so I don't think that Android is going to look substantially different than it does. But you can change it up too if you want. There are various what we call launchers out there, and you just download the launcher app and you can run that as your primary launcher. And so if you really want to change things up, there are applications that you can do. There are launchers. It's really not that hard to really go ham with customization on this. Maybe not as much as other phones, like Samsung's and some of the other phones, but still, you can radically change the interface if you want. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. I will say that unlike Apple, Apple just had their event a couple days ago, and they're talking about all their AI, their Apple Intelligence, and all this, and they're like, yeah, coming sometime, right? The cool thing with Google is a lot of the AI stuff, even though it's not running the new Android operating system, out of the box, when you get this phone, you have pretty much all that stuff, right? So, I've got like the Add Me feature. I've got all the new astrophotography, the new panorama mode. I have kind of a watered down Gemini. I've got Gemini on here. a few other things, right? So you've got a lot of the core AI stuff already running, even though it is, running um, on an old or a soon-to-be old operating system. You kind of are getting a lot of the stuff up front versus Apple, where it's kind of like, well, some stuff's coming in October, and then the rest of the stuff sometime this year. Anyway, I think that was a boss move for Google to drop the Pixel to, what was it, almost 2 weeks prior to the iPhone. I think getting ahead and kind of getting out of the shadow of the new iPhone. I think it was a good move, is a baller move by Google. And this is a really great phone. It's an overall great phone. So that's the operating system. As far as the AI goes, I've really already talked about the AI. It works fine. I'm not a huge, AI is just not a huge selling point for me. But yeah, it works fine. The Google Assistant has always been a little better, I think, than Siri anyway. So I don't really have any major complaints there at all. So yeah, the AI, it is what it is. Google's doing a good job, and you get some watered down features from what you get out of the box in the Pro phones, where you get the Gemini Super Advanced on Google for a year. If you buy the Pro phones, you don't get that necessarily with this phone, but you do get a lot of the features, and it's a little watered down, and it's still a fairly functional experience with AI machine learning. You do also, Google also purports to give you 7 years of security and operating system upgrades, although I don't know, 7 years, a lot can happen in 7 years. I don't know that anyone's going to have the Pixel 9 in 7 years, but it's still nice that Google has dedicated themselves to providing that many updates, and that allows you to actually keep a phone for several years. So that's good to know. As far as the cost and storage goes, it's kind of a mixed bag. The price for the Pixel 9 increased, so it is now on par as parity with the iPhone 16. So it's kind of competing there. I'm a bit ambivalent about that. I think it'd be more competitive if the price didn't change, if it was $100 cheaper than the iPhone 16. But I don't know. Google has less than 5% of the market share. It's like 3-4% of the market share. So it's not like they're selling a whole lot of phones compared to the iPhone anyway. And so Google maybe just thought, well, whatever, we'll increase the price, and people are going to buy it, and it'll be all right. I don't know, but I think they could have been a little more competitive with the pricing. But yeah, but like I said, compare this to the iPhones, same price. I mean, you're getting, I would argue, a better display, brighter display. You're getting the high refresh rate. You're getting the always-on display. You don't get any of that with the iPhone. So it is on parity, but I will say that I got a really good trade-in. I got it was a $500 trade-in on my Pixel that I had last year. So you can cut $500 off the cost of this. That's pretty compelling. As far as the storage, that's another area where I really think Google dropped the ball, and this isn't just Google. Apple does the same shit. In 2024, I think 128 gigabytes is fairly limited storage for a lot of people, particularly a lot of people take a lot of photos and videos. Now, I have a Google Drive, and I pay yearly to have the ability to back up all of my photos on Google Photos, and I have a Google Drive account. So 128 gigabytes works with me because I have that, but just as far as, if I wanted to natively store a lot of my photos and video, 128 gigabytes would be woefully lacking. And I think in 2024, with the high quality cameras that we have, even on more budget-minded phones, with these high quality photography and videos, 256 gigabytes really should be the bare minimum bar for storage, and it's kind of almost a crime in a way that companies are, particularly because they're making you pay, essentially flagship, prices, basically $800. You really should be getting a reasonable amount of storage, but you're not, and so that is an unfortunate pitfall when looking at the. You can pay an extra $100 to get the 256 gigabytes of storage, but yeah, so there you go. But like I said, I got a really good trade-in. I got $500 trade-in on this. I actually checked Apple, see about trading in my iPhone 15, and I think they would give me about $400. So Google actually is giving me an extra $100 on my trade-in. So in some sense, I'm actually making up for the $100 price increase due to the $100 extra that I'm getting on a trade-in. So, maybe that helped me out a little bit. I don't know, but yeah. So the cost is roughly on parity with the iPhone, but Google is notorious for sales and notorious for dropping their prices at multiple times throughout the year. So it's highly likely that you'll be able to get some really good deals on this in the future, unlike Apple, where it's basically unheard of for Apple to decrease the cost of their hardware, at least their their newest hardware that they sell. So you shouldn't have any expectation of Apple doing that. So Google and Apple are both companies that, the bottom line is money, and they want to stick their hand in your pocket and take as much of your money as they possibly can. In that sense, they're both the same. But I will say that a lot of things that Apple has done, it's just really, really frustrating, as far as, their baseline phones, and they're still doing 60 hertz display. And I know there are people out there like, you really can't tell the difference. But, some people can, first of all. And, it's not just a high refresh rate display. It's also the brightness of the display. It's also having an always-on display, right? It's just all of these basic things that are available on lower-end Android phones that cost even less than the Pixel for years, where Apple still doesn't have any of that, and it is just a little perplexing. I mean, obviously people are going to buy it, so it's supply and demand, right? So I guess that is what it is there. It's a tautology, but it is a bit perplexing to me. And it certainly was a no-brainer for me as to, if I'm going to get a new phone this year, is it going to be a Pixel or an iPhone? iPhone 16 versus iPhone 15, I'm paying $800. I'm not getting as good a trade-in. And what am I really getting with a new Apple, other than, the colors are cool, I guess, Apple Intelligence, but, I've already got a lot of that with the Pixel, and then, then some, it's called the call screening, the always-on music, where it listens to music and gives you an answer. You can tell it, you can have Google make phone calls and set up appointments for you. You can do all of that out of the box with this, so I have a lot of the AI kinds of stuff that, you would see with Apple. And so for me, it was a no-brainer that this would be, that the Pixel would be my new phone for the year, at least, what I'm using for work, over the iPhone. I mean, I'm still going to keep my iPhone just because, they kind of got me in that walled garden, and, I use it as a personal phone, and, with, iMessage and all that. But, there's a lot of parity coming, now finally Apple is going with MMS, texting, and multimedia, texting services. And people are rejoicing in that, apparently, but that's like, well, Apple basically got dragged kicking and screaming to that, right? There are lawsuits coming out of Europe as far as the USB port on the iPhones. You know, Apple, we'd probably still be using Lightning ports, right? If the European Union didn't make Apple, again, dragged Apple kicking and screaming. So a lot of the quote unquote innovations, at least recent or contemporary innovations that we're seeing with Apple, such as USB port and MMS, are really forced, right? Apple's been forced to do this. It's not like they're like offering it up for the consumers, you know, whereas, you know, with most Android phones, you know, the Pixels for years upon years have been USB-C, you know, for years, right? I mean, I'm talking all the way back several years ago when the baseline Pixel was a 90 hertz, it was a 60 to 90 hertz display, so it was kind of the intermediate. And this is before even the Pro iPhones were offering high refresh rate and LTPO displays and all that, you know, and there were, you know, low-end Android phones that, you know, had good displays and always-on technology. Maybe not, you know, true LTPO, but, you know, still, you know, something reasonably comparable. USB-C has been around for many years, so you've got a lot of this fundamental stuff baked into these phones for years, and Apple is just not doing it. And so even now, I think Apple is still a little behind the power curve on, you know, what they're offering. You know, even with USB, you know, it has the slow, at least on the iPhone 15 and 16, maybe not the Pros, I don't know, but, you know, just the standard phones, they have the USB 2 transfer speeds, and I know you can argue, well, you know, most people aren't using that. Yeah, but, you know, are most people, like, 60 hertz, is that like a deal breaker for most people? Probably not, but, you know, there's a section of the population that has had that for years, that have had always-on displays for years, that have had USB ports for years. And then there is this other thing that they're just not. They just don't want to innovate. They don't want to do that. And, you know, anyway, it's interesting. And look, I have an iPhone too. You know, I'm part of the problem. I'm not, you know, I'd be a total hypocrite if I didn't point that out. But, you know, as far as, you know, what I'm recommending, what I'm using, you know, because I spend most of my life at work anyway. This is it. I mean, this is my workhorse daily driving phone. And I wholeheartedly recommend it with the caveats that I've mentioned in this video. So that is my comprehensive review of the Pixel 9. Is you know, no doubt have gathered. I'm a fan. I really like it. I really like that it directly competes with the iPhone. It's too bad. I really wish. And look, I know Google is a company just like Apple that, you know, they don't truly care, right, about the consumer in the ways that we would hope. I get that, right? So I'm not saying that somehow Google is so much better ethically and morally than Apple when it comes to the consumer by any means, right? But I just wish that more people could experience this and would use this, and that there was more market value. More people were using these, because I think what it would do is it would put more pressure on Apple. It would put more pressure on Apple to innovate and to really kind of up their game. But as it is, you know, they just basically have a market right now of like the top 10 phones that are sold around the world, like what, 6 or 7 of them are iPhones, and they're not even new. I mean, you're talking like iPhone 14, I think, was the most popular phone last year, right? The older iPhones are super popular. And I just wish that, you know, something like the Pixel would be able to take more of the market and kind of put more pressure on Apple to innovate and to put out, you know, kind of put some more thought into their products. You know, it's definitely not the Apple of 2007, but, you know, hey, it is what it is, and this is my comprehensive look at Pixel with the addition of an Apple bitch session at the end of this video. So what more could you guys ask for? Hope you enjoy the video. Take care. Bye-bye.